Today on Life Club with me, Tashima Jones. Award-winning celebrity life and identity coach, inspirational speaker, contributor, and author Pervis Taylor III joined me to discuss getting rid of the old self. A recent shift in my personal paradigm has led me to more fully understand the importance of changing old habits for new ones that better suit my current stage of life. In order to expand, we must truly recognize the necessity of change and then implement that change by discovering what works and what no longer benefits us. We must also see ourselves as new, more evolved, all while trusting better is available to us and for us. Pervis believes authenticity is key to living our very best life. He believes that acknowledgement and sitting in your mess is a way to true healing. I am super excited for our guest, my very, very first guest, Mr. Pervis Taylor III. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited. Today's topic, we'll be speaking about getting rid of the old self. That's something that I have been experiencing, just coming, in this spiritual peak. And I'm like, how do I get rid of that old person? So you are the perfect person in my mind to actually help me through that. Before that, I just wanted to read your bio to tell everyone listening who you are and what you've done. So Pervis Taylor III is an award-winning celebrity life and identity coach, inspirational speaker, contributor, and author. Pervis is a graduate of the University at Miami, where he received a bachelor's of business administration and marketing. Me too. After graduation, Pervis launched his career in New York City, working in the entertainment industry. He spent his early career working and interning for iconic brands such as Def Jam Recordings and the National Association of Recording Arts and Sciences, AKA the Grammys. I never really knew, the whole thing.
Right.
Heard you.
It's a whole long thing.
It's a whole situation.
Yeah.
And you've done tons of other things since then. You just graduated. Oh, started or graduated?
Graduated from Columbia.
Yes.
Master's in clinical psychology.
Awesome. So, in your own words, tell us who you are.
Wow. I am an award-winning life coach and author and all those great things, but I'm a man who likes to see people become great and heal and become the best version of themselves. Like, I'm literally such a proponent for people healing, especially men. My focus, I've worked with everybody, but my focus as of late has been men and helping them to heal with their emotions, heal with their mental health, and all those things like that. So
definitely,
that's me. I'm fun too.
Yeah.
Outside of all that. Yeah.
Of course. So before we jump into the topic, I have what I call the same seven. I ask these same seven questions to all of my guests, and you're the first one. So it's a rapid fire round of questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Go ahead.
All right. So first up, what's your favorite song?
Zoom by the Commodores.
Heard you. What's your favorite color?
Mauve.
Oh, okay. Color?
Explain.
You guys don't know what mauve is like?
That's new to me.
It's like champagne-ish with hues of purple and.
We learning our colors on Life Club. Yeah. Okay. Look, I gotta go Google that color.
You gotta Google mauve. Yeah, MAUVE.
Yes. Favorite food?
Oh, seafood.
Okay, same here. How do you stay healthy besides eating seafood?
I exercise. I try to exercise 5 days a week. I drink lots of water. Try not to eat too much meat. I try to eat more vegetables, take supplements, and I mind my own business.
Thank you. So necessary. Yeah. What advice would you give to your younger self?
What I would give to a younger Pervis, go to therapy sooner. Confess your pain sooner.
Okay. If you could go anywhere in space and time, where would it be and why?
It would be when Mary J. Blige was making the My Life album. I would love to have been in the studio with her and Puff and Faith and all those people who created that album. And why? That album was really like the impetus for me confronting a lot of the things that I was suppressing. So that album was like the first time I connected with an art form personally, viscerally. Even though I wasn't going through like the pains of like love, the album to me emoted just emotional pain.
Yes,
which I could identify with.
It's so funny you say that because I'm like, Mary J. Blige is like, she might be one of my fairy godmothers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was so young listening to this music and I connected with it, even though it really wasn't the connection that
it wasn't
being,
the connection that was being sung about.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. But all I really wanted is to be happy. I wanted that too.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you. And last but not least, how do you live your best life?
You live your best life by always being truthful and being authentic.
That's good. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, even with yourself.
Yeah.
Even with yourself. I realized that early on, that it's like, if I don't get over myself or confront myself, I'm really not going to make it in this game of life.
But so many people are afraid to do that because they don't know where to begin. And, you take it in parts.
Definitely.
You take it in parts.
All right. So now for our topic of discussion, getting rid of the old self. I really think it's important for us to not only know who we are, but know who we have been and know who we're becoming.
Absolutely.
And I think that those, answering those 3 questions really allows us to show up to life. I recently, and on this show, I'm going to share a lot of my business. I'm just saying because it's my truth.
It's important too.
And recently I have discovered I've really been delivered from a lot of things that I didn't even know I was delivered. I didn't even know I was in bondage to until the deliverance happened.
Wow.
And it was like, oh my gosh, that's what I was going through for 5 years.
Yeah.
That was my issue for 7 years. So with that being said and experiencing this growth, I still have this issue of the old self. The old self for me is now just habits of who I used to be. But now I understand who I am and who I'm becoming, but I still have those habits and some of my mindsets are still the same about certain things.
Right.
And I wanted to speak with you about getting over that person, not necessarily forgetting about that person, because I do think that person has a lot to do with who you are and where you're going.
Absolutely.
So it's important not to forget, but how do you shift your mindset? How do you shift your behaviors to really fulfill the person you are in this moment?
Well, I mean, you said a lot of actually what I wanted to say, but it's like, it's not about getting rid of the person. It's about developing and growing that person, right? Because that old person was you, excuse me, and had the great things that you possess right now. You always had that, but you had to go through a process to discover it. So it was always there. And so it's like, I liken it to a system upgrade. On the iPhones, it's like, sometimes you get those update notifications like, man, I'm not going to do that. And then your phone start acting up. Then you realize, oh, I need to upgrade my system. And it's the same thing. You make peace with the old self, right? You don't forget them because that person got you to where you are right now, right? But you make peace.
And how do you do
that person? Forgive yourself and give yourself grace. You know what I mean? Because you didn't know what you knew at that moment. You didn't know what you know now.
Yeah.
And it's all part of a journey. It's all part of a journey. So it's like it really is not as mean or forceful as I think we try to make it. It's really about just saying like, yo, I used to be an a-hole. I used to be a jerk. I used to hurt people. Why? Because I was hurt. This thing really bothered me. You know what? Let me forgive myself. And if I can, let me make peace with these people whom I've hurt.
Definitely. And what does making peace look like? You mentioned forgiveness. And I think sometimes we are so willing to forgive others faster than we are to forgive ourselves, And I think part of what my issue was this idea of perfection. It's like
and that's for everybody, right? And that's for everybody because we don't want to. Who wants to be known as a person who was a jerk? You know what I mean? Like nobody wants to see themselves that way.
And when we think about that, sometimes we kind of make it okay. We find a way to make it
to
okay
justify
in
it,
our
to
mind
justify it,
so
yeah.
that we won't feel like
Right.
you could have done a little bit better.
You could have done a little bit better. But I mean, it's really part of the confrontation, right? And confrontation is not a bad word. It's about really sitting in it. You know, the way to release an emotion is to sit in it. You know what I mean? So sit in what you've done. Sit in your mess. That way you can feel everything like, oh my God, this is what I did. And you don't beat yourself up in the process. You're like, oh my God, it's ugly. But in the end, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And now you've come out on the other side, this beautiful person. It's like a metamorphosis in some ways. You got to sit through the junk and the muck and the mire, all of that stuff. Glean what you can get from it and apply it to your life. You know, because the thing is, you don't have to announce that you've changed. The change announces it for you, right?
That's good. That's like Instagrammable.
Right,
That's
like,
tweetable.
That's a cool, okay.
But you understand what I'm saying? How I know a person has changed, they don't have to tell me. I can tell that they've had a confrontation with themselves, and life has caused them to have no choice but to confront themselves.
Oh, because you know what? One of my questions is going to be, how do we get to that moment of confrontation with ourselves? And you said it, you know, life will cause you to have that
Absolutely.
confrontation. And I think sometimes we want to run away from those moments and we hold it up because we don't, you know, life can be knocking at your door for a while
Right.
before you actually answer. And
Right.
the sad part is that a lot of times we find ourselves flat face on the ground before, you know, we answer that confrontation.
And also, too, we don't see it happen to other, you know, when we see it happen to other people, we don't think that it's going to happen to us. But really, that's a warning sign for you. Like, oh, let me go just really examine what's going on with me.
Definitely.
You know?
Definitely. And then there was something else you said just about, you know, sitting with the mess. And again, I call this period of my life spiritual rehab.
Yeah.
I gotta copyright that. That's gonna be like a retreat or something.
Yeah,
But it
that's
was
dope.
literally this moment where, you know, I write about it in the book where I say I'm sitting at my kitchen table with the Bible and a pen and a notepad asking God, like, who am I? Like, who am I? Why am I here? And what's going on in my life? Because I tried to do it my way and it's really not working.
Right.
And that was the moment where I actually literally sat with it. I literally sat with everything, all of the choices that I made with my life, all of the things that I was running away from. Because that's another thing. A lot of times we're running away from ourselves or running away from our journey.
And that's what when we were speaking earlier about Quincy Jones' documentary. A lot of people have success that wasn't intended because they were running away from something and it was just a byproduct. You know what I mean? And that's just how they coped. I achieved, I succeeded. But really inside, I had this big hole in my heart. I had this big hole in my soul. And everybody, you know, we run away because we don't know how. Think about it. You know, I work a lot with men, right? And I'm, you know, teaching them how to deal with their emotions and process and things like that. That's foreign to a lot of men. So how do you become something that you've never seen before, right? That's scary. So what's the easier thing to do? I'm just going to run away and continue to be who I am because I don't know what that looks like. I'm not even brave enough to even see, you know what I mean? And I look at it the same way with us, just as humans dealing with our stuff. We run away because we don't know how to begin. How do you make it right if you've wronged people? How do you fix that? How do you change that in your mind? You know what I mean? And I think for us, we see it as this big mountain. And again, like I said, you just take it in parts. You begin with saying like something's not right. Confession, right? That's why Alcoholics Anonymous is like the most successful recovery program, because every meeting they acknowledge I am an alcoholic.
Wow.
Only what you confess can be healed. Right? And so like it's that part. So once you say, you know what, I kind of realize I haven't been that great of a human being. Right? And if that's as much
that's
as
a
you
big
can,
statement.
and that's a big,
No, it's beautiful though.
yeah,
it's
it's
like
beautiful.
it's so sincere.
Yeah, and it's heavy though to like
Yeah,
take
to
accountability.
Wow.
to take that accountability. Or even for
Wow,
me,
that's
like
good.
personally with me, like I didn't think I was that great of a big brother to my sister and brother. But that's something, I mean, it hurts to say it, but that's what I feel and what I kind of know to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first step. That's the hardest step. Honest to God, the hardest step is just saying that.
Yes.
Everything else, it's a journey and a process that you have to be willing to endure.
Right.
But if you can stick to it, you're going to be all right.
Mm-hmm.
You will become the person that you envision, and if not, exceed that.
Definitely. And so acknowledgement, sitting with the mess. Once you get to that space because essentially when we acknowledge it, we're also acknowledging our readiness to move forward from it.
Right. So when you acknowledge something first, right? So it's stages. So you acknowledge, okay, I wasn't that great of a human being. Then you accept it, which is the responsibility part. Right. So, you know what I mean? And that's really like, I'm taking ownership for all that I've done. Because you can say like, oh, I kind of mistreated that person and leave it there.
Right.
But then when you accept that I've damaged somebody, I've hurt them, and I'm responsible for this, and I want to do something to like make it better and to change me, that's a whole nother level. And then you go from acceptance to articulation. You start to articulate who it is that you want to be and what you have been and what this thing has done to you. What has this hurt done to you as a human being? And who do you want to be? So you start to articulate. Then you get to the last stage of alchemy, right? How do I turn, I always say Jesus was an alchemist, right? Because Jesus turned murky water into sweet wine. Mm-hmm. How do you turn this murky water into sweet wine? And that looks different for each person. Mm-hmm. So for me, being abused, being molested, all those things like that, being emasculated, I turned it and now I help men. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I help some of the men who used to bully me.
Wow.
You get what I'm saying?
That's big. And I think a lot of times the things that we have to get over, we are called to kind of go back to those very spaces or people and either face or heal, or there's always this moment, just like, the alchemist had to go back. Going back a new person, going back.
And that's the point. Mm-hmm. You have to go back and make it better. Mm-hmm. That's how you change your life.
And essentially, you're changing the course of history. You are going back, and it's not necessarily righting those wrongs directly, but it's almost as if you're able to relive that moment in the real you. Right. Some people say it's the new you, but it's the real you, because you were able to scrape off, through that acceptance, through that acknowledgement, through that forgiveness. I always say, the real you is just buried under all of this muck and mirror of the world. Right. Because when you're a baby, I truly believe you come in just as happy as can be, and then somebody tells you what's wrong with you, or somebody misuses you, or somebody, all of these things. And eventually, if you allow those things to enter in, and oftentimes as children, we don't know how to resist those things. Sometimes we really don't. So it's like that 5-year-old self, inside of you that's like, well, I believed I could do this, but then mommy was like, no, you can't.
Right.
Or I thought I was beautiful, but then, daddy did this, or whatever the case may be. And over time, we're just buried. Their true self is buried underneath all of these hurts and all of these pains and all of these disappointments. So I say, the real you, not necessarily the new you, because the real you is finally able to breathe, and just break free, and then go back and kind of relive that. I've had so many moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm literally getting a second chance at this moment, at this relationship or this type of relationship, but as the real me.
Because also too, in acknowledging the real you, you have to acknowledge that the other you was a lie. Like you believe something.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Right. So it's like we all believe a lie. And for most of us, it's I'm not good enough. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right? It all starts from something like that. Something in life has told you that you're not good enough. Maybe somebody may have actually told you, but we come to the conclusion that we believe a lie quicker than we believe the truth. It's easier for us to believe we're not good enough rather than we're amazing, we can do anything, we're magnificent, all those great things, right? It's easier to believe the lie. Mm-hmm. And so really life is about debunking the lie that you believed about yourself.
That's so good. That is so good. No, it's so good. Like literally, like a few weeks ago, because I've dealt with, I always felt great about myself by myself.
Right.
But then when I was in like the room, it's like, well, what does that
Yeah.
person think about me? Or is that person going to accept me? Or is this? And then I remember the moment where I heard like, stop believing the lie. That literally just broke me free, because it's like over time you hear the bullies. Or
Yeah.
you hear the person who hurt you. You hear that voice over, God's voice or your own voice.
Absolutely.
And then it's like when I realized, and there was a series of events where it just kind of made sense. You can hear something once in one space of your life, and then you hear it again. It's like, oh my gosh, like I get it now. That revelation just hits. And it started with debunking the lies. It started with saying, you know what, I've been believing all of this time that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't pretty enough, that I didn't have this or I didn't have that. And then in that moment of accepting myself and then understanding how much of The Matrix, like one of my favorite movies.
Right.
Yeah, because
It's
it's
so
very
true.
true.
It's so
Yeah.
truthful. It's like believing this system. And I want to, speaking about going back, I want to talk about how a lot of the lies come from our upbringing, and a lot of those things that we experience were just generational, passed down to us.
Yeah, and also too, it's like our parents and our grandparents didn't have the opportunity or the space that we have today to really like process and really deal with ourselves. Their whole thing was like, I got a family. I want to provide for my kids. Bam. I want them to do better than me. And that's it. Right. It is generational. They don't know, like our families don't know how to deal with pain, emotions, trauma. They just don't. They
And
just
the way
don't talk
that they
about
deal
it.
with
And they
it,
deal with it.
exactly.
They just don't. For instance, it's crazy, right? So I'm putting my business out there. I don't care. My cousin attempted to molest me as a child when I was 16, and he's tried to do something to my sister as an adult, and he's married, right? Why are y'all over his house for Thanksgiving?
Right.
That's bewildering to me. And so I look crazy because I'm like, I'm not really, I'm not entertaining that.
Yeah.
But why are you?
Yes. Yes.
And you have a child. I don't
get it.
understand
I
that.
totally get it, because that was a thing in my household. It was kind of like, you just do what you got to do, keep it moving. Like there was never really a space to heal. There wasn't this conversation. Like we can laugh and we can joke, but everybody can go home hurting. And it's
Right.
just kind of like, I didn't know how to process that, because I'm like, if I'm hurting, why can't I talk about it? You know what I mean? But then what I realize is that's what happened in their lives as children.
Absolutely.
That's what happened in their parents' lives as
So
children.
they're taught suppression.
So when you go back
Yeah.
into the and that gave me such a freedom to forgive, number one. It's
And
like,
have empathy for them.
and have empathy for other people, but to also make sure that I do what I have to do for my healing.
to break it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Break the curse.
Definitely.
It's true. Like as families, as especially people of color, we're taught suppression. Don't talk about that. Don't talk about why can't we talk about that granddaddy has a whole nother family?
Right.
Why can't we talk about that?
Where do you think that comes from? Like, what is that?
Right.
Because that's a big problem.
Well, if you think about it, if you really go to slavery, right? And I hate to be that person, but it's true. Our voices were robbed from us. You know what I mean? It's like as men and women, generationally, we were taught to never have a voice or to advocate for ourselves. If we did, we were killed. And so it's conditioned. You know what I mean? And it's funny, you see it today in the youth. So many young men are dealing with depression, anxiety, all these things. Some have been molested, some dealing with so much stuff, but they don't even know how to advocate or even speak because they don't even see it.
Right.
It's all the way down to here. Something that happened in slavery is affecting us all the way to
Yes.
2018. We don't know how to voice ourselves without, we don't know how to articulate ourselves in a way that it's understood, right? We can get, what we get is like oftentimes outbursts, violent outbursts, or cursing out, or like stuff happens at you know, family gatherings. But rather than like, let's really talk about it. And also, we have an aversion towards therapy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
As a culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't want to look like we want to look like we have it together. We're interested in looking like we have it together, but not actually having it together.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
It's
a whole.
It's levels.
It's levels.
It's levels.
It's levels.
Even in our fashion, like I always, you know, fashion is like super important. I think because it's an expression of who you are.
Yeah.
But I think it also speaks about the body and the life and just the human being. There's so many people who are like super duper fly, head to toe, and they go home to spaces that you would never pair. You know, you would never connect.
All the time.
You would never, and it's like this facade of I want to, you know, show up and look a certain way. And you may not necessarily feel that way. And that feeling may be financially. You might have all of the latest brands, but you don't have any money. You know what I mean? Or you may have the nice car, but you don't necessarily live in the best space. So it's just this imbalance. And I think that happens a lot within our culture. And I think that's why healing is so hard to obtain. Because like you said, nobody wants to hurt in the public.
Right. We don't want to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I was just reading something today. Somebody sent me something about Dwight Howard and all this craziness about him. And I said, yo, we just love to out people and expose people. Like we love to like, and I'm not justifying or defending him at all, but it's like, we don't know what he's gone through in his life that's kind of led to this space that he's in, you know, allegedly. It's just we love train wrecks. We love a mess. We don't love healing.
And you know what? The only people who truly love those things are those who aren't healed.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think that's at a point when you get off on like someone else's hurt, check how much you're hurting.
But think
that's
about
an indicator.
But think about this: these shows that we have, if there's no drama on the shows, they get canceled.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so if all these people really were to get themselves healed, their check is gone.
That's like a whole like. So,
Onion layer.
acceptance, acknowledgement, responsibility. You understand who you are and where you're going. How do we change the habits? What are some tips and tools, or you know, is it something that we should expect immediately? Is there a time? Like, what does getting rid of the old self and showing up as the new self even look like?
That's loaded. That's a loaded question. Excuse me. As far as the habits goes, you have to understand that everybody copes, right? Everybody's looking to cope. Maya Angelou wrote poetry to cope from being raped as a child, right? Quincy Jones made music to cope from having a mother who's schizophrenic, right? We all cope in various ways. Some people just cope in ways that are harmful to them, right? Some people are promiscuous. Some people do drugs. Some people drink. Some people like to gossip. Everybody has something to cope. You have to find and identify the habit that you don't like and say, what is the alternative to this habit? What is the opposite of this habit? And how's this habit suiting me now? What is it doing for me? What need is it meeting? Right? Because everything we do is based on unmet needs.
Talk a little bit about that. Everything that we do is based on unmet needs.
It's based off unmet needs. That is our biggest motivator in life. Our perceived unmet needs. So if you want love, attention can look like that. You know what I mean? If you're looking for love, whatever your definition of love, if you find it in a relationship that looks like that, that's what's going to drive you. So, of course, a person can be in an abusive relationship if they think love is that.
Right.
And
Or
they
if it-
feel
or
like
they're
it's not
getting the
meeting,
attention.
and they're getting the attention, and it's not, and it's meeting a need. You know, habits meet needs.
Wow.
They do.
That is so simple, but so like habits meet needs.
Yeah. Habits.
It's about picking the right type of
It's
habit.
it's about picking the right
habits
type
meet needs.
of habits.
You know, because I thought of habits as just something you do over and over, but I didn't understand. Like the way you said that was as if it's like the ends to a means. I think it's like this is why, like, it's just
if you have a routine every day, right? You have a routine that's suiting something that could be consistency, right? That could be a need for consistency. I get up at 6, I go to the gym, I do this, da, 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 da. Now, if you're a routine person, when something throws your routine off, your whole day is messed up, right? Because you like routine and consistency. Like, you like having a sense of order in your life, right? So it really is sitting down with yourself and saying, like, what are my needs that I feel that are not being met right now? And what are the habits that I'm doing to support that?
That's good.
You know? Yeah. And then you start to say, like, okay, so I want to do something different. So for instance, you have a habit of, like, coming home, like, for me, for instance, I love brownies from Starbucks. I have to get one almost every day. That's like a habit of mine, right? Instead of getting the brownie, I can get a fruit bar or something to replace it. But that need is, I like to reward myself. I can reward myself with something different than chocolate, than a brownie.
That's
you know
good.
I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. And habits meet needs. It just, for me, that makes it so much more of an urgency to change your habits.
Yeah, because if I really think about it, I don't really I like the brownies, but it's really out of habit at this point. It's not out of I need it.
Right.
And that's the thing. Habits initially start out as meeting a need, but then they just become routine.
They just become routine.
So the important thing is to make sure that you create these habits that are consistently meeting your needs for the space and life.
And that is
that
something
you are
positive.
occupying.
And that is
And it's
positive. And that is positive.
That's good. That's like you guys can see me. I'm like really
Yeah.
like that helped me so much because now I know that number one, I'm not just creating a habit just to change my mindset. I'm creating a habit literally to change my life.
Right.
Because the habit, was just, I just want to think new thoughts. But then it's like, no, the reason why you need to create this new habit is it's not only for just a healthier mind space, but it's also to manifest the things that you want.
Absolutely.
In life. It's not just, I
because
just want to
what you've been doing is not
working.
right. Because no, because what you've been doing is not working. So you do need to change your thoughts, change your life, right? Change the quality of thinking, change the quality of your life. And I think, but that's a hard thing to do, right? Because our minds, they're like tape recorders. Those negative thoughts are like tape recorders, and you got to start talking to those thoughts, right? And people are afraid to do that. I'm not afraid to do that. I've walked down the street like, I rebuke you. That's not true. The devil's a liar.
Right.
Nope.
Yes.
I'm like, Jesus, nope. Because those thoughts, you know what I mean? Because they've been stored up for a long time. They're back in your subconscious.
Yes.
It's in your subconscious. So you have to literally start to integrate into your thinking through your mouth, through your words, the great things that you are. And, because one of the things that you said earlier, and I always tell people this, when you believe something, especially for the positive, when you believe something, there will always be something to challenge that belief.
Yes.
So if you say, I am good enough, there's going to be something that's going to happen that's going to make you question if you're good enough.
That red or that blue pill or.
Yeah, that red. How big is your faith?
Yeah.
And so it's like you have to know and that's why developing a habit of having healthy thoughts and having a healthy conversation with yourself is so important because you are going to be tried.
Right.
And that's something that I've learned because when I did, recognize the power that I do have to just think. Like how many people don't even realize their power to think?
Right.
Just think. Like you can choose your own thoughts. So when I realized that, I'm like, well, I'm thinking this, but then I hear this other thought. And it's like I had to be okay with this reality that for every positive thought I have, there may be more than one negative thought.
Oh, it's gonna be like 5.
Discernment.
Yes, 5 against that one positive. It's funny. I had to present me and my business partner had to present it was a big presentation for our program for young men. And we were both nervous. And I normally don't get that nervous. And I feel like I kind of flubbed the presentation, even though everybody was like, it was great. And so I'm leaving there, and these thoughts are like, yo, you're not a great speaker. You're not this. You're not a great da-da-da-da. And I was like, no, I'm incredible.
Right.
I had to do that. Like, no, I'm the best life coach ever.
Cancel that.
Like I had to literally start doing that, because you're not going to take me down the path of anxiety.
Right.
Yes.
Because that causes anxiety. A lot of times anxiety is the positive thoughts battling the negative thoughts.
Right.
That gives you anxiety.
Wow.
Because you haven't made a decision, which is true.
I gotta replay this like and take notes. It's so
You know
true.
what I'm saying?
It's
That's
so
exactly
true.
what it is, yeah.
It's so true. Okay, so we're the new self, changing our habits, recognizing one other thing that you mentioned about habits is that the upgrade.
Yeah.
If you still have, it's great to establish habits, but if those habits aren't helpful to where you are now, you need to change them. Some people have really great habits, but it keeps them in the same space.
Right.
So definitely, showing up as your new self requires new habits. And I believe those new habits will automatically change your mind.
Absolutely.
And then,
It all works together. Mm-hmm. It all works together.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right.
and then what's next? Like, what do we do when we show up as our new self?
Persist. And that's the hard thing. Like, it's easier to obtain than to maintain.
Wow.
Maintenance is hard. And that's really where the real work begins.
And what does that real work look like? Because I
You
know
have to
for me,
make
I
sure.
write, like, if you go to my bathroom right now, there's like little index cards in the mirror. I try to have
Yeah.
like Post-its and notes everywhere, constantly reminding me of the new self or of the new direction or whatever it is that I'm working on in that moment. Being
Right.
intentional
Being
about the
intentional.
shift.
Being intentional about it, but setting an intention every day to be that person, right? Even if things don't go the way that you want them to go, you're going to forgive yourself, right? If you slip up, if I drop an F-bomb because I'm mad about something, all right, God, I'm sorry. And, and keep it moving. But that's where you start to activate a lot of grace towards yourself. You activate a lot of intention. You activate a lot of accountability and availability. You know what I mean? To hear from your friends, to have wise counsel, things like that. But it's an integrated process. It's like a system in place to maintain that. Because if you don't, trust me, that old way of being will become comforting. You know what I mean?
Yes.
The further you get away from it, the less comforting it becomes. But if you're just out of it, and you're like this new person, it's so easy for you to go back.
Yes.
Because that's comforting. That's familiar. We love familiarity as human beings. We do not like new things. We don't like change. So you have to set an intention that I'm going to stay on this path.
Definitely.
And I'm going to keep this system in place to make sure that I stay on this path.
And just, I think really being aware of self, regardless of where you are, is key. And then understanding what makes you comfortable, but also listening to that voice that's screaming, please get me out of here. Because I believe we all have that. Regardless of how comfortable it is, we can sit back and be like, girl, you need to get out of this relationship. You need to leave this job. You need to we know that. We know that. And you just have to let that voice get loud enough for you to abandon the comfort for something new.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's really imagining my best self. Right. Like, even when I don't feel like my best self, to imagine my best self.
I agree. That is perfect, because I tell people all the time, I tell my clients, never lose or quell your imagination. Never let go of your imagination. Because I always tell people, I said, curiosity killed the cat, but curiosity also created the billionaire.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. So it's like, you can imagine yourself out of a situation. Like, there's a study that says that if they had basketball players who imagined themselves practicing versus those who actually practice, and they had the same results.
Wow. What? Oh, so the basketball players did not practice. They just imagined.
They imagined themselves
Wow.
practicing.
Hurt you.
Right. No, but I'm just saying, like,
The power of the mind. Yeah, like the
mind.
placebo effect.
Exactly.
Where it's like people who believe that they're getting better.
Right.
Get better.
Heal just as well, probably better because they
At
don't
a
have the
faster
side
rate
effects.
because they don't have the side effects.
Right.
As those who are taking medication. And this is a whole nother level, but like medication and meditation, let's make people, we got to make that connection, but that's another,
Yeah, it's a whole nother
that's a whole
yeah.
nother show.
Yeah.
But the power, I say that to say the power of the mind is so underestimated at times, and it could literally change our lives in an instant if we just tap in.
But I think a lot of people don't even know what that new person looks like for them because their mind is so cluttered with so many other things that they need to address.
But should they know? Shouldn't it be a blank easel, I guess?
Well, for me, I think deep down inside of us, we may not know what it looks like, but we know what it feels like. We know
I
what
mean, there's a knowing.
There's
but
that
I think-
knowing.
But I also think because we're so clouded by everything like culture, social media,
Right.
our issues, suppress things that it's hard to even get to that place. But I mean, which is why I think a lot of times people are saying like, I know something's there, but I don't, a lot of times people are always in flux because they have anxiety because they know something's bubbling there, but they don't know how to get to it.
And how do we get to that?
You gotta dig. You gotta
Dig.
dig and do the work. You gotta work through all of that stuff. I mean, I think one of the great things about therapy is that therapy kind of gets you to a place where you see your life in like puzzle pieces, right? All scattered around. And you have the opportunity to put it together the way that you want the puzzle to go together. And that's the beauty of it, right? So now when you work through stuff, sky's the limit.
Right.
Sky's the limit. And I think it's better to become a successful person when you've been healed and you're whole. I think that's true success, right?
Yes.
As opposed to 99% of people who are successful, but they have these big holes in their souls.
Right.
That's good. This conversation has definitely been life-changing for me.
For me too.
I am so grateful. I've learned so many nuggets that I'm going to like literally summarize and share with the world. But I'm really, really happy that we are able to have this conversation in this day and age, in this space with people who look like us. I think that's super, super important. And I'm just so grateful to just be in the room, just to be in the space. Hopefully, I'm just going to speak my dream into existence.
Yes.
Pervis Taylor III will be our resident life coach on Life Club. I'm just putting it out there.
Putting it in the
I'm just
atmosphere.
putting it in the atmosphere.
Right.
Every now and then you just drop by, drop some jewels on us,
Right.
and, keep it
I would
moving.
love to. I would love to.
So, anything new coming up for you?
Yeah, I have a book for men called Surthrival Mode.
Say that again?
Surthrival.
Surthrival. Heard you.
Yeah, so it's bridging between just surviving and thriving, creating a bridge for men within their emotions and mental health. So it's a book specifically for men, but obviously anybody can read the book. So I'm really excited about that. That should be out next month of January. And I just got word that somebody big may do the forward for the book. So
Okay.
Really?
You
yeah.
can't really drop any names
I can't
right
drop
now.
any names
Okay,
right now.
we'll
I'm
wait.
hoping that God, we thank God in advance. Praise God.
Amen.
So I'm really, really excited about that, and just the work that I've been doing with young men of color around the city. I have a program called Alchemic Solutions with my business partner Jeff Ulysses that you met.
Yes, and he has to come on the show too.
Yeah, he has to come on the show. And the results we got from that program, we did it at York College, was just incredible. Like some of the data, we gave a survey and we were reviewing the data, and it was just like, oh my God.
And what's the name of the program?
Alchemic Solutions.
Okay, and
so basically it's that whole premise about teaching young men how to turn murky water into sweet wine
nice.
while you're also trying to achieve academically.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. And how can we get more information on the program and, of course, stay connected to you?
You can go to pervistaylor.com, pervistaylor.com. On social media, I'm at Pervis Taylor on all platforms. And I guess you can hit up Tashima
Of course.
to ask about me as well.
Yes.
She had my social security number, everything.
I sure do. No,
Retina
just
scan.
once again, this is Life Club with Tashima Jones. I am so grateful just to have the opportunity to share life with you. My biggest desire is just to set people free and just to live their very, very best life. And I think oftentimes you hear about living your best life and you see people popping bottles and doing all these other extra things. But the reality is, if you are not whole on the inside and healed on the inside, those things will only last a very, very short time. And I truly live to see other people happy and set free because I am. And I know that it's literally a miracle that I am in the space that I'm in. And that's something that I don't want to keep to myself. Because if I told you how to make $1 billion, you'll be taking notes. And this is far more valuable than money. Again, Life Club with Tashima Jones. Thanks so much for spending your time with me. I look forward to next week. And until then, own your greatness. I am Tashima Jones, and you've been listening to Life Club. Thank you for tuning in.